negative self-talk, general anxiety disorder, chronic fatigue, depression, uncontrollable anger, rage, loss, grief, chronic isolation, and toxic relationships. All of these things have one thing in common. Pain. It causes an enormous amount of pain and suffering because it destabilizes our life. Other than the pain itself, all of these things cause overwhelm. The one side effect that is across the board for trauma. Trauma causes an extraordinary amount of overwhelm. The reason it causes overwhelm is because we're a two-sided system. We've got the brain and we've got the nervous system. Now, the brain in its essence is designed to process the information that's received by the nervous system. What trauma experiences do is the intensity of the experience is too high. Because it's too high, your brain can't logically translate this experience into a narrative that makes sense for you. And if you can't explain what you're feeling because your body is in panic, then you push it away, you shut it down, you avoid feeling it, you hide away from it, you suppress it. That feeling that you're feeling, that's making you completely feel like you're broken, like you're empty, like you're lost, like you can't control your emotions or your anger. That feeling that you're so sad you don't even want to eat. That feeling is the overwhelm that your mind is experiencing from this monumental task of feeling the feelings that your nervous system is trying to send to your brain. In essence, all trauma has this in common. This overwhelm causes us to not have access to our bodies. So it traps us in our mind. And if you're trapped in your mind, then obviously you don't have access to your body. It's a loop, right? It's a perpetual cycle that you repeat over and over and over again. We try to manage our thoughts in order to get some remnants, some little snippets of control over these feelings that our body is experiencing. But trying to control our thoughts doesn't work. We avoid thinking what we associate as these negative thoughts. We avoid thinking what we associate as the bad thoughts because these thoughts trigger me. I'm afraid of them. Because I'm afraid of them, they're going to cause my body to re-experience this fear, this feeling that I'm already terrified of. So why the hell would I voluntarily think that thought that I know is going to cause my body to go into the state of panic? It's normal. It's part of your conditioning. We're conditioned to move away from pain. We're never taught that the way of processing pain is going into it. This is something we have to learn as adults. So how do I then control my thoughts? The simple answer is you don't. You don't control your thoughts. It's an automated system linked to so many neural connections that if we try and control that, if we try and inflict a voluntary force upon that, it's like water where you try and stop the water and it just finds another way through. Our neural architecture works exactly the same way. So where does that leave us? Ironically, we learn how to control it by learning how to not control it. We learn to become aware of what we have already become used to doing. So we become aware of our thoughts, in essence. We become aware of everything that we are afraid of thinking, everything that we refuse to think, everything that happens inside of us that we are avoiding. This is the very first thing. There's 3 tools to learn to become aware of internal thought processes. The very first tool is learning the difference between reacting and responding. Listen to that again because you've probably heard it a gazillion times. One of my favorite quotes was by a guy called Viktor Frankl. He was a scientist, a neuroscientist, and a psychologist that happened to find himself in a concentration camp in the Second World War. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And one of the lines in this book goes, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Choosing how we interact with our environment really is what Frankl is saying. Well, this is what freedom is. This is what true freedom and growth is. A reaction is automated. A reaction is a behavior that the more my body is practiced this particular reaction, this instinctive reaction, it becomes a habit. It becomes habitual. Think of it like professional athletes. They practice over and over and over and over and over again until they don't have to think about it anymore. It becomes a reactive behavior. Now, the same thing happens with our thoughts. If we observe specific environments, especially if we experience trauma during our lifetime, the thoughts that we construct in order to protect ourselves from re-experiencing this pain, those are self-protective thoughts. And initially the intention behind these are really, really pure, it's to protect me. The problem is we repeat them for years. These things can carry over year by year by year by year. The point is, until we become aware that we have the choice to respond instead of an automated reaction, we're slaves to our behavior. So the very first thing is hit Google, okay, and check what is the difference between reacting and responding. And then you plant that little seed in your mind. And as you walk around in your day-to-day stuff, you choose how you're interacting with your environment. Choose what do you say. Choose the words you speak. Choose how you behave. Choosing means you're responding. If it's automated, it's always going to be a reaction. That's the first thing. The second thing is very deeply rooted into something that causes so many problems: expectations. How many problems does expectations cause? So the second thing is learning to expect less. How the hell do I learn to expect less? It's not like I can just press a button in my head and I go, okay, Marcel, from this moment forward, you are going to expect less. I don't think it works like that. How do we do it? We learn to expect less through first becoming more aware of what I already expect. Okay, so we always start with where we are. We become aware of everything that's going on inside us now first, right? We can only start from where you are. This is where that quote, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. That's where it comes from. So figuring out how do I expect less from my environment and from myself requires an awareness to be cultivated around your current expectations. How do you become aware of your current expectations? You write them down. You write them down. As you catch yourself thinking, I just expected that. I expect this from myself. I am supposed to be this. Anything that has a I am supposed to be, they are supposed to that, you were supposed to this. Those things are expectations, projected conditional behavioral requirements that come from conditioning. Find your expectations. And as you find your expectations, you'll become more aware of how you project them. Now, if you find your expectations with practicing to respond instead of react, what happens? It means now I'm aware of what I usually expect, which 9 times out of 10 was probably an automatic reaction. But because I've practiced to respond, I can respond differently and maybe still be aware that I have the expectation, but change my corresponding behavior or verbalization or articulation. The third thing, we practice listening more than what we speak. This sounds easy, but it's not. This is why we have to practice responding versus reacting first. Okay, because the better you get at learning that I just wanted to, but I didn't because I was aware that I was going to, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to respond different. The more you and the better you become at doing that, the more information you can actually absorb, the more information you can perceive. I like to look at it in a very practical kind of a way. Look at just your face, right? How your face is designed. We've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 1 nose. So by design, we can say that we are made to listen and look more than what we speak, okay? Otherwise, we would have 2 mouths, 1 ear, and many people walk around like that anyways. So practice to listen more than what you speak. Now, why? Why do these 3 things? We do these 3 things because it's really important for us to become more aware of our internal cognitive processes. The more we can become aware of the internal cognitive narrative, the more we can start to recognize the patterns. So this is the first part, the cognitive parts of this process.